Sitting around with nowhere to go. Sitting around with nowhere to go. You're talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. Talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. And then my recruiter came to me. Then my recruiter came to me. Say what you want to be. Say what you want to be. I told him mean and lean and green. Told him mean and lean. All right, so I just want to state that this video is going to be very choppy. I'm parenting my two sons today, so I've got a 1.5-year-old and a 5-year-old almost, and they're at home, and mom is out doing some shopping for her new physical therapy clinic. So I had to start and stop a bunch. So if I have any incomplete thoughts along the way, I'll try to edit it to make it all make sense. But if I start saying something and I don't complete it later, please understand that's why. You can add a question in the comments. I will watch it through a couple times and make sure I try to answer all those. But you know, sometimes things happen. So thank you for understanding, and thanks for watching our videos. Welcome back, Anna. It's the Staff Sergeant Chamberlain. Had a lot of requests this week and a half, 2 weeks, to do a video based on how you can obtain an E on every level of the FLER. This video is mainly going to be about the intel section. So weather, terrain, enemy analysis, enemy mission analysis, hour analysis. These are places that you can go in and be very basic, and you can check the box. Okay, you can get an S, and an S is okay, right? An S takes us where we need to go, better than an N for sure. But if you're looking to start getting E's, there's a lot of stuff you can break down. It'll make you better as a leader now, much better as a leader later, and you'll likely be required to do it anyway. So it's okay to start looking at the stuff. I will say, if you're struggling altogether and you're just having a hard time getting information out of the op order, this is not the video for you. You need to continue working on op orders, continue working to better, more meticulously pulling that information out of the op order as it's read, and then putting it into your own op order later, you know, to brief to your candidates or your team. So if that's where you're at right now, just go past this video, go watch something else. If you just want to know about the FLER, that will be in this video as well. I'll have it, you know, the timeline sectioned out where you can find that. And then, you know, I guess that could make this video for you. But you need to be able to get the information out of the op order before you worry about checking all the boxes. All right, so we'll jump to the FLER real quick, and then we'll kind of go through it piece by piece, and then I'll do the intel piece. So let me share screen here. All right, so this part is the intel part. We'll get into that in a minute. As you can see, there's a bunch. I'm going to give you a link. I'll have it tagged in the description below to where to find all this stuff, because there's a lot of reading you can do, and you can get really good at this, or be less than great at it, whatever. Okay, so you should be able to see the FLER now. I will go ahead and state, let me see if I can zoom it out. I can. Okay, so if the modern day FLER is the exact same boxes, that just takes up the whole front page. The comment section is moved to the back, and kind of all this slides down, okay? But if you've never seen a FLER, that's okay too. It's a little late in the game. Well, I mean, I guess if you're new at this, it's not late in the game. But if you're looking at going to phase 3 pretty soon, you should have seen this by now and know what it is. So number one, you're looking at an E, an S, or an N. This is the grading system. An N generally means you did not complete the task that is listed on the left, okay? You'll notice these tasks are laid out, the troop leading procedures, the 8 troop leading procedures, until you get down here and it kind of lays out in the op order. So you can see situation, mission, execution, and it goes on and on and on. So it's looking for you to do all of the troop leading procedures, and then they're going to grade you on that. So it tells you down here in the grading scale what they mean. N needs improvement, means you did not get it. We just call it N for no-go. S for satisfactory, you check the box that is equal to an officer candidate at phase 3. We're not looking for, you know, the next General Patton at this point in your career. And then E for excellent means you went above and beyond. So it tells you here, complete tasks consistently, uses critical thinking, no major errors, 1 or 2 minor errors, well above level that is expected of OC. That's the grading for an overall E. Okay. Overall satisfactory, completed tasks, uses little or no critical thinking, has 1 major error and or multiple minor errors, is at the level expected of an OC, and then a no-go or a non-sat or needs improvement, fails to complete or attempt task, or has made multiple major errors below that expected of an OC. So what you need to understand is that when you show up, 5 of these, let me zoom out to a full screen here. So 5 of these will be identified as majors, okay? And it differs every single year. Whoever's in command that year is the one that determines. You can expect the mission statement is going to be a major. Okay. Your concept of operation or scheme maneuver somewhere in there may be a major. Using a terrain model has been a major. ROE is almost always a major. I'm kind of looking to see because there's been so many different ones. Timeline, doing rehearsals has been a major in the past. So realistically, if you just treat them all as majors and make sure you check all the boxes, you're fine. But they'll tell you when you get there what your 5 majors are, and everything else is a minor. There is no set number of how many things you can miss except for E. If you have an E, no major errors and 1 or 2 minor errors. Okay, so that's the only one that gives us a number we have to abide by when it comes to minors. So an S, you can have 1 major error and multiple minor errors. Well, no one says what multiple is. So I treat it on a 10-point system. That's how I grade. It's not how everyone else grades. So a major is worth, you get 10 points total. A major is 5 points. Let me rephrase that. You can miss 10 points. Once you miss that 10th point, you're done. Okay, because that would be 2 majors automatically drives you to 10 points. A major is 5 points and a minor is 1 point. That's how I grade. So a person comes to me and they have 1 major miss and then they have 4 minors, they get a go from me. That's an S. Okay. As long as they have no major errors and they can have 2 minors, they can get an E. But they generally needed to have some E's based in there as well. I also allow an E to eliminate a minor. If I have someone on, they're not going to get an E from me that way if they have too many minors, but they can save an S. So if they go in and they get 3 E's and they have, they've hit 10 ends, just the N should fail them, but I allow the E to pull those up to an S. So it's just kind of everyone does their own thing. Ask your grader what exactly how he's going or she is going to grade it, and then just abide by their rules. All right, so let's kick off through here real quick, and we'll talk about this. How to get an S or an N. So an S is going to be whatever it says. Now, the action that it requires it's pretty variable once again. So this is an objective foreign with subjective things built in, okay? So analysis of enemy's mission. I need to know what they're trying to do. How am I going to show this while I'm receiving the mission? I grade it. Do they ask questions? Do they ask questions about the enemy? Do they confirm the enemy's mission? Okay, so these are things I'm just wanting to think of. Analysis squad mission. This is where I want you to request the right equipment. So if you're doing a knock out a bunker, you need to request grenades. If you're doing an ambush, I want you requesting claymores, AT4, something that goes boom, a time available. That one's pretty hard for me to grade. Are you analyzing how much time you have available? I can start putting no there and giving you an N when you start missing time hacks along the way. If you don't miss time hacks, you generally get an S. All right, so everyone, welcome Beckett to the show. Hi, Beckett. This is my son. He's almost 5. He said he's joining this video. So here we go. Issuing a warning order. These are the 5 things I have got to hit in every single time I give a warning order, okay? I have to state the squad's mission. It does not have to be twice, but it does need to be the very final squad mission that I'm going to give out my brief. So the very first thing you need to do when you get done receiving the brief is write out your squad mission, okay? That's going to always be a major anyways, so you're going, I say always, most likely. So you want to make sure that it's written out, right? And it's the 5 W's. So first squad, our squad, will conduct what? On objective, whatever they give you, in vicinity of grid, no later than a timeline, and in order to do a thing. Okay, so that's the squad mission we're stating. Provides planning timeline, so this should be your complete timeline. That's the other thing you should have already done anyway, okay? As soon as they give you your time is now, that's your H time, so I'm writing that down, and I quickly just do the math, okay? I know I need, at minimum, I have to have an LD time, a time on objective, and a time complete. Okay, those are the things that I need to have to give to my squad. And an op order brief time. So it's okay to put more pieces in there, whatever keeps you on task. So I put 5 minutes is going to be my warno, but I don't have to state that here because they're already in a warno, right? So I'm not going to state that the warno is going to happen at a certain time because they're already in it. So don't put that on there. So the only thing they need to have is when the op order brief is. Later on, you can put rehearsals and PCCs, PCIs, all that stuff, but we're not really worried about that in the warno. You can do it if you want. Provides additional information available or additional available info. Did you get pictures of the place? I always ask for their cell phone, or I have my candidates always ask for, can I see the satellite imagery of where we're going? They won't always give it to you, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they have a map that's printed off that's a little bit better than yours. Every grader is different. Some want it to be fun and some want it to be miserable. So just play with whatever you get. Also, are we taking smoke? Are we taking grenades? Are we taking claymores? What all additional information did you get? So team leader specific guidance is the next one. I'm going to tell them to go do team level rehearsals. Now, these rehearsals must be done while they're in security because you don't have security yet, right? So what that means is they can go over to the machine gunner and walk me through, clearing your weapon, or walk me through verbally what your job is, the ORP, or they can go to a team leader and walk me through verbally what you would do if we take contact to the front. Okay, so these are things I want to see. A lot of times it's going to be your aid and litter team as well. Okay, it's going to be your EPW team, your LZ team. Ask those kind of questions, or have them do those kind of rehearsals verbally. They can't get up. Okay, they're in security. Time, place, audience for order to be issued. This is a requirement, and people always miss one of the three. Okay, so time, place, and audience all have to be stated. It's going to be here at the sand table. It's going to be at whatever time you've identified at the 15-minute time, and the audience will be everyone, unless you weren't granted security, and then it's going to be team leaders. But always ask for security. They will almost always give it to you, and then you can take your whole team. All right, getting an E there, in my opinion, is impossible. Okay, I'm not giving an E for issuing a warning order. Some people may be different. Where you could persuade me maybe is if you did great on additional information or team leader specific guidance, but everything else is just a timeline or the mission statement or where to be. Okay, you're not gonna get an E there. All right, everyone say hi to Liam. Here's the other little dude. Okay. So making a tentative plan. So this is the next piece, right? The next troop leading procedure that you're going to be graded on. Once again, this is a very hard place to get an E. Okay, it's all analysis. I can't really tell if you're analyzing something or not. So this is often where I'm going to maybe not even know right now if you've done it. So I may have to check it later when you get to your brief, because you're just sitting there, right, on your rucksack, whatever it is, but you're analyzing, creating this mission, and you're doing it in 15 minutes. I can't possibly grade all of these things. A lot of the times I'm going to grade these as you're giving your brief. So we'll come back to them in a little bit. Initiate movement. This is conducting initial inspections, rehearsals, contingency plan. So where do you do this at? Well, this most commonly happens in the Warno, okay? So conducting initial inspections, this is going to be in the Warno. You're going to reach over and grab and check your team leaders to do a quick, like PCC, PCI, whatever you want to call it, okay? So I'm checking them to make sure they filled up their water. Check a couple things. Do you have your ammo separated or distributed evenly? Yes, great. Are your canteens full? Yes, great. Do you have the spare barrel bag? Yes. Cool. Okay, now I'm going to tell them, go make everyone look like you. And that way, when we do our PCCs and PCIs later, I know that everything is complete. This also gives them time to correct things if they need to. So they could have to tell their soldiers to go get water, to go fill up their canteens, which is almost always where it happens. Okay, some kid doesn't have their canteen filled up. I say kid because I don't know why. Anyway, someone doesn't have their canteen filled up. Now you're missing your LD because your team leader didn't do their job. So it's a great place to get that in. Conducts rehearsals. So same thing, the stuff I told them to go do earlier can be here. Also, often can be confused with this rehearsal, the one at the very end, supervise and assess. I'm kind of checking them off at the same time. Okay, so rehearsals here is the same thing as team leader specific guidance, generally, but not always. And then rehearsals here is right before you LD. If you screw one up, it's a place for a grader to get you 2 no-goes in the same, you know what I mean? So you're going to miss 2 minors by not doing rehearsals, and it might be a major also. So conducts contingency plan. This is anywhere throughout this process you're telling me you have a backup plan for something. Okay, so if it's an alternate route, if it's give me 2 LZs, is it whatever the plan. Okay, if I can say this is how we're going to do it. We may have to do this. I've created a contingency plan. It can just be in communication. It could be in your, when you start looking at leadership later, right? So if I go down, who's in charge? So you could, secession command. You could definitely count that as a contingency plan, but you want to make sure you have multiple and get this to be an S. Same thing here. I'm probably not giving you an E for any of this stuff, okay? This is pretty common stuff to just get S's. It's a great place to get an N if you don't do it. All right, conducting reconnaissance. Confirms and denies the enemy. So this is going to happen during your leadership recon, or your leader's recon, right? So you go out with your RTO, your alpha team leader, alpha machine gunner. I have to go look at the spot we're supposed to attack. I got to confirm and deny there's an enemy there. Yes, there's an enemy. Yes, it's, 2 or less or 3 or less, whatever they've determined is your number. And then make sure they don't have any force multiplier engaged. Make sure there's not a Humvee out there with a gun on it or whatever. Okay, you can look at all the things. But biggest thing is confirming and denying that there is an enemy. Verify assumptions of terrain. So this is if I have planned by my map recon that I am going to envelop to the left on an attack, and I get there and they have cut down all of the trees on the left side of the objective, then my assumptions of the terrain were wrong. So I need to verify those and see, do I need to go right now? A lot of times when we get into the intel here in a minute, we'll look at this as well. But, is there a ravine or a slope we can get behind? Is there denser trees? There's some way that we can get in position without being seen, which gives us more of that element of surprise. Okay, so verifying assumptions terrain, what was actually out there based on what we saw on the map? Do I need to make a change to my plan? Can go into a contingency plan, right? Hey guys, we're going to brief this. We're going left for an envelopment. We could possibly go right. We call that California and New York. So if I say those anytime, you'll know what they mean. Confirm fighting position. So this is when you're setting in your support by fire team, right? This is right now it's my alpha team leader and his or her machine gunner. I want to make sure that I have them in a location that makes sense. So I'm confirming where I want them to be, where they have visibility on the enemy. The enemy does not have as much visibility on them. They have clear lane of fire. Yeah, so that I'm doing that. And as well as it kind of goes back into that California and New York is the place that I want to go to conduct my envelopment good for what I'm trying to use it for, or do I need to change that? Same thing here, probably not giving you an E. Did you see the enemy? Yes or no? Great. Was the train what you wanted it? Yes. Confirms fighting positions. Okay, that's about it. I don't see a way there to get an E. My son's going to move back and forth into the room for a few times, I'm sure. And he's going to talk to y'all. Complete the plan. Okay, so prepares a briefing site. Did you prepare the brief? Did you go over and put your hands on the terrain model? Develops a terrain model. Exact same thing. These are, in my eyes, indistinguishable from each other. Okay, they're the same thing because the only thing you're really briefing on is the terrain model. Now, once again, on briefing site, if you removed all of the leaves, if you removed everything that could be mistaken for, part of your terrain model, that way it's a clean slate, then that could be an S there versus actually building the terrain model. I'm not going to count off if someone just lets the terrain be because it's almost always going to be natural anyway. So not really a big issue there. I guess if you tried to do it on a tree trunk or surrounding a tree, I might say your briefing site sucks and give you an N. I don't know. Updates tentative plan as necessary. So anywhere along the way, especially while you're executing the mission, if you get intel that changes your mission. So where's it most likely to happen? Okay, if you have a leader's recon, if you get a recon mission, okay, and you go out and you actually complete it without being found, and you get back, they're likely going to change it into an attack. If you go out and you made a plan to do an L-shaped ambush, but when you get there, the road has been altered and there's no L, you're not going to set up an L-shaped ambush in the middle of the tree. So now we may do linear, or vice versa. Maybe they've added a road, okay? So you plan to do linear, now you got to do an L-shape. So anything you adjust along the way, I can give you an S here. So just update your plan as you need to, okay? Ensure that if you're looking for that E here, you could possibly get it, but it would have to, I can't even think of a situation. It would just have to stick out to me as a voila moment, okay? So moving on. So issuing the order. There's my son again. He thinks he's going to make some noise. He's going to make some noise. So situation, okay, terrain and weather, the very first two things that should be out of your mouth, and we're going to get into the intel portion of that here shortly. But you need to talk about terrain, you need to talk about weather. Just stating the words and like, hey, there's terrain out there and weather out there is probably going to get you an S. If you use critical thinking and do any of the things I show you later, it's going to give you an E. Okay, enemy composition and disposition, we will also talk about those in the intel section. But composition generally means what are they made up of. So I talk about how many are there. So I'm going to say, you know, intel states that there are enemy teams of, you know, 2 to 3 personnel with RPGs and you know, AK-47s. That's their composition. Disposition, high morale, low morale. They've been out there for a month. These are very basic things to say, right? Generally, it'll tell you in the op order their morale is pretty low because they've not had reinforcements in 6 months. Or maybe it says, you know, they have high morale because they were just reinforced and they got new boots, you know, whatever. Enemy course of action. So what are they trying to do? What are they doing? Most time it's going to be guarding a cache of some kind, radio intel, patrolling a road or a trail. Whatever your mission is, it's probably going to fit to that course of action. So if they're in a bunker, you're probably going to knock out a bunker. If they're patrolling a trail, then you're probably going to do an ambush. Okay? So just make sure you regurgitate that information. Friendly hire mission and end state. This is the first place that I think you can get an E beside, well, if you followed all the intel stuff I'm going to show you in a moment, you could get an E on all of these, okay? But it's very, very hard, and it's way too much time for you to try for. So, friendly hire mission. My E here is just going up 2 levels. So I am a squad element. If I brief you the company mission and end state, and then I brief you the platoon mission and end state, and then I brief you mine later under execution or during the mission portion, I'm giving you an E. If you only do 1 up, that gets you an S here. Okay, so you have to say, no matter what, you got to say your platoon. If you can say your company level as well, and they're correct, okay, then I'm going to give you an E. All right, so all in all, say 2 levels up, say 1 level up, state your mission and mission, I'm going to give you an E there. Not everyone's like that, but most are. Civil considerations, almost impossible to get an E here. Okay, you're looking at regurgitating 1 statement, and I'm going to give you a yes, an S. Attachments, detachments, another one. You can get an S by saying attachments, detachments, none. If you don't say it, you get an N. Okay, a lot of those become just regurgitated straight out of the op order. Mission. This is a place that I give E's if someone states the perfect mission. My squad, first squad, will conduct an attack on objective alpha in vicinity of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No later than whatever your H plus 45 or 80 or 90 time is, okay, in order to do a thing. So I've given you the who, which is our squad, first squad. The what will conduct an attack. The where on objective alpha in vicinity 1 through 8. When, so a no later time it must be complete by, and the why is the in order to. If you state that exactly like that every time, I'm giving you an E. Most people won't, and then so you'll get an S for getting 4 out of the 5, or struggling through it and giving me 5 or whatever. I'm supposed to give you an N if you miss any of them. So then it becomes like, do you sound confident and have it put together correctly, or did you jump around and do a bunch of crazy stuff to still get an S? Versus if you don't say any of the 5, you get an N. That's just kind of subjective. Stated twice, there's no way to get an E. You say it twice, you don't. That's an S. Execution. Okay, so this is the walking the dog portion. So this is while we're actually, we're actually on the train model walking it through. So concept of operation, scheme of maneuver, those 2 things are going to come from there. In my template, I go back and walk through both of those as a verbally stated piece that is not on the train model. So we go to the train model, I walk you through the entire thing. I say, all right, get your pen's paper back out, and I re-go through my template, and I cover those, okay? So concept of operation is, what are we doing, okay? Hey, we're going to move out. We're going to set up an ORP 50 yards from the objective or 100 or whatever. Okay, we'll do a quick leader's recon. We'll decide which way we need to go. I expect it's going to be a California. So we'll go out. Get Alpha Team recombined. Bravo Team, you go with me. We'll go over to the left, envelop left. And then, we'll sweep through, do our attack. And then, whatever. If it says defend in place, we defend in place. If not, it says we get out of there and get back to the ORP. Right. So that's the concept of operations. Very, very quick. Scheme of maneuver is where you have to give people a task and purpose. Okay. So I am telling everybody what they have. Alpha Team, you are aid and litter, primary aid and litter. You are primary pace and compass. You are primary LZ team. Okay. and I'm going to tell them what they are and why. So you are Aiden Litter. Purpose is to quickly triage and treat any wounds, received by enemy or friendly personnel. Whatever you want to give for the purpose, and I've gone through those before on the template, so I'm not going to get too in depth here. You can go back and watch that video, and it goes through all those. That's your scheme maneuver. So you need to tell people overall what are we doing, and then individual pieces here. Here's what we're doing. Scheme of fires, you have to tell them if you have fires or not, even if you don't have it. You have no fires, or you are priority for fires, or second platoon, or Bravo team, or whomever, second squad, whoever is the priority, you tell them. You also need to tell them what rounds they have, what size, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we're talking everything about scheme of fires. Let them know we have it, that you have a TRP set up, or we don't have it. All right, moving on. So using the terrain model, did you go over and actually use it? There's no way to get an E here either, okay? This is just a yes. Scheme of fires, I could possibly give an E if someone told me all of the things, right? So fire control measures, what's the trigger, what's the, how am I initiating this, what's the command, everything about the TRP, et cetera, then that's great. Those above, I could give an E for if you just lay out a perfect plan that has all the contingency plans built in. You've got your LZs down. You've got phase lines, a primary and a secondary route. You've pace planned everything. So all of your communication throughout the entire thing is pace planned. How are we initiating fires? How long will fires go? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so if you can do all that, I could give you an E on all three of those. It's not very likely. Use train models, just an S. Use the train model. Task to subordinate units. That kind of goes back to that. When you're giving them the task and purpose, it's the same place. It goes here as well. So you could get an E if you do a really good job. Coordinating instructions, that's directly out of the op order, okay? Probably just getting an S there. PIR an S, ROE is an S, okay? You just have to state them as they were given to you. If you miss any of them, you might get an N. Most likely, you're going to have to skip it altogether to get the N. Reports, an S or an N. Timeline, an S or an N. Not a lot of chance for an E there. Same thing with logistics, personnel, health, system support. All that is just regurgitation, so no E's there. Same thing here on command and control. Okay, you're probably not getting an E anywhere. If you just had a really good back brief and someone asked you some hard questions and you had the answer and you'd already briefed them, this isn't a crutch. It's not a place for your comrades to save you. If you didn't give a timeline and they ask, what's the timeline, you just are getting a no-go for that anyway. So tell them that ahead of time. Don't ask me questions if I didn't say it, because you're just going to hurt me. Supervise and assess. This is where you can get an E. If you just end up being just a junkyard dog and you were absolutely working your teams and you don't miss anything, you could get an E here. Conducts PCCs, PCIs, probably just an S. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Oversees squad prep, conducts PCC, PCI, and rehearsals. Okay, the top two here are just going to be, did you do them, yes or no? So it's an S or an N once again. Okay, I'm not going to give you an E for making sure that you really well checked PCC. It just doesn't make sense. So as long as you're watching them prep their stuff, making sure your stuff's right, checking with your RTO, doing PCCs, PCIs with everyone, you're getting an S here and you move on. If not, you're going to get an N. Rehearsals is where I can give an E. Okay, it usually comes down to how much time you have left based on everything else. So the primary rehearsal you will always do, so these are squad size rehearsals. We will always first do whatever our task is, because that's the one that we need to see to give you an S usually. Okay, so if you have an attack, you're walking through an attack. A KOB, walk through the KOB. Whatever your mission is, walk through that phase first, and then go back and do whatever else you want. Okay, a lot of people like the one-step method. So as I take a step, we're at the next part of the plan. So we LD, this is what it looks like. We take, we walk 200 yards, we do a SEALs. We go the 500 yards, we're setting up an ORP. We rehearse that. We rehearse a leader's recon. We rehearse all of these things. We rehearse red, white, and blue plan at the end, which if you don't know what that is, you go watch my other videos. And it's just a very, very fast, or it's a way to get us off the X fast and getting all the intel done. And everyone knows what's going on. It's just a one-word play. I say one-word play because I'm a coach of football. So I say one thing and it means something different to 10 people, but all 10 people initiate that thing at once. So, and then command and control. Once again, you can get an E here. Where this usually does is hurt people, okay? You generally get an N here if you go out there and lose your mind. So stay the course, you get an S. If you just do, absolutely outrageously good, I can give you an E. Usually not going to happen in squad lanes. It usually comes in company or either platoon or company lanes later on, because those are, bigger operations. There are a lot more people moving around. If you're the company commander and you're working really well at controlling 3 platoon leaders, then you're probably going to get an E. At the squad level, not very likely. All right, so once again, as the answer has become here of late, because you guys are asking some very detailed questions, which is awesome, but it all depends on what your grader wants, okay? This is an objective list, meaning something I have to check yes, no, or great, but to get to them is going to be objective. I'm going to go back to make a tentative plan because I think we skipped that one earlier. So as you can see, squad mission, I don't know if you analyzed it really well. I can check a little bit from up here. So there is 2 places for analysis of squad mission. So I read it here. I can also take it from up above, okay, and say you did a good job there, or you at least did it there. But also, as you're briefing, you may bring new information to light that I didn't know you were thinking about. So I can increase this grade. Analysis of enemy, analysis of terrain, analysis of weather. All of these things are, you're going to state them in your brief. So I don't know if you've done them until your brief. So I could give you, generally, whatever you get down here for terrain, weather, and enemy is what you're going to get up here. If you don't do it, you're going to miss it multiple times. Analysis of troops available. I'm really doing that off task to subordinate units. Okay, so if you break that down really well and you understand there's primary and secondary teams for everything, you have LZ team and you have a KOB team. So if you've broken down your teams like that and you've given them all primary and secondary tasks, I'm going to say yes. You understand how many troops you have available and you've given them all tasks. You've delegated the right amount so that everything is getting done and you're not doing everything. So that's big on delegation. Once again, civil considerations is there's nothing you can really do there. Okay, analysis of that, like don't blow up a house on your way through and you'll be okay. And develops a course of action. If you were able to brief a plan, you developed a course of action. It'd be pretty hard to get an E here. So I have had a couple people get E's there, but that was an Army Ranger, okay, that was commissioning after his time in the Rangers. That was an SF guy. Those 2 got an E on develops course of action. As you can imagine why. They go out and operate these ridiculous little tiny lanes. To them, I mean, they were at recess, right? Everybody else was sweating getting all their stuff, and these cats had no business being there probably. They probably could have taken direct commission, but the Army said they needed to come show me that they were really cool. So great guys, by the way. Didn't flaunt it at all. It was pretty awesome working with them. So I think I've checked everything on here. Okay, big thing is just asking you what are your majors. Understand what you absolutely cannot miss or cannot miss more than one of. Get as many E's as you can to offset ends. Not every grader is going to do that for you, but I will. Just understand that it just literally you're saying these words or you're checking these boxes and we go. One last thing before we move on to intel stuff. Okay. Try to do this in order. Okay. If I am having to wait for you to provide a planning timeline, basically once you've hit past the warno, you're getting no-goes, anything you didn't do. But if I have to continue waiting for you to do something, I'm probably going to mark it no-go. And if you do it later, okay, so some people will do, usually in the brief, people just say things out of order. Okay, so they want to talk about terrain and weather after they've given their execution paragraph. Is it useful? Yes, we still need that information, but is it where it's supposed to be? Not as much. And is it where it's out on the paper? Not at all. Okay, some graders will just tell you no, you missed it out of order or you hit it out of order, therefore basically you didn't say it. Everyone's different, so hit these boxes in order and just save yourself. All right, so now we'll move into the intel stuff. So if you have any questions about the FLER, please feel free to comment a question down in the comment box. If I've not already sent you a copy, you can request one from me, ask your command for one. Okay, they're not a secret. Okay, they're in your CMP. You're supposed to be able to have access to them, so get access to them. Understand what you're being graded on, and just be able to check the boxes. So now we're going to move over to intelligence, okay? And as I stated before, this can get very, very deep very fast. This is an intelligence preparation of the battlefield. This is for like very high echelon, okay? It's supposed to be on a slideshow. I can't even find the slideshow. All I found is this. I've been using it for about 5 or 6 years. I originally found it when I was going through OCS and trying to figure out what do they want when they say, you know, weather and terrain and enemy composition, disposition, etc. So this is what I found. So we're going to go through this real quick. I say real quick, we'll probably talk. So first of all, when you're talking intel, it involves establishing the limits of the battlefield by identifying the area of operations, battle space, and area of interest. Okay, these things are all different. Area of operations defined as a portion of geographical area where the commander is assigned responsibility and authority to conduct military operations. The AO is based on the factors of MET and must be sufficient size to allow completion of the assigned mission. It's exactly what OCS does. We give you a very tiny lane. It's usually an 800 by 400 yard or meter. I realize those aren't the same. Okay, we're American. We do feet and stuff, but a lot of times in the Army, obviously it'll be in meters. So you're looking at 800 by 400 meter area that you're in control of. And then, you know, in the pretend world, the next squad would have the next one over, and you would have an area in front of you, an area behind you, one to each side, and those are things you need to know about. Okay, the area of interest includes the geographic area and airspace where the threat, the environment, could impact the successful conduct of the command's operation. So essentially, the area of interest is going to be much, much larger than the area of operations. Okay, so you're going to have area of interest is big, battlefield is smaller, AO is much smaller, and then, you know, I guess you could talk about your objective or whatever. So you feel more than free to go through and read this stuff. Okay, I'm not going to read it verbatim all the way down because there's a lot to it, and I'm going to cover the basics. So your area of interest is the area of concern for your commander, and it's going to be everything in front of, behind, and beside your AO. Moving on. Okay, so the very first thing when we're talking terrain, okay, this is what they call the homework function of the IPB. So this is the list of things you're looking for and kind of what defines them. So we'll just start with, so they use OCOCA, okay, and you can see that written out somewhere down here. OCOCA, OCOKA, right? OCOCA, and what it stands for is these things up here. If you've never heard it, you probably have, but observation fields of fire, cover and concealment, obstacles, man-made or natural, key terrain, avenues of approach, okay, is that second A. And then you need to understand that there's ground and air, okay? So avenues of approach is both ground and air. You're not going to worry about mobility corridors, most likely. If you start talking about that in one of these missions, you're in the wrong place. That's kind of where that S2 cat that was the Great Britain guy that ended up winning the whole cycle. He talked about stuff like that, but he was good at it. He'd been doing it for years. So it's not something, a skill to try to pick up now to show off for people. He just naturally thought about missions that way, okay? All right, so we'll get into what these each mean and how you can kind of look at them for your mission. So military significance of terrain is analyzed in detail to determine how it affects friendly and threat capabilities, vulnerabilities, and courses of action. So obviously, I'm looking at the terrain to see what I need to do to gain maximum benefit, to destroy my enemy, what allows them an advantage over me. Terrain is analyzed in terms of its 5 military aspects, can be remembered easily by using OCOCA, and then what they stand for. We've already talked about that. Here we go. Observation. Observation is the ability to see a particular area to acquire targets. Okay, so observation and visibility are often used interchangeably. That is imprecise. So visibility is dependent on weather. You know, you talk about fog rolls in, your visibility is next to nothing, but that doesn't change your fields of observation. Okay, observation is terrain dependent and is relatively permanent. Generally, the best observation is obtained from the highest terrain in an area. What can I see? What can't I see based on terrain? That is your observation. Fields of fire refers to the area a weapon can cover effectively from a given point. So fires can be of 2 basic types, direct and indirect. We already know that. Direct fire weapons are machine guns, rifles, tow weapons, things that you need direct line of sight. Indirect is other things. Artillery, primarily the effect, you can push them over a hill or whatever, right? You don't have to have line of sight. So read this part, it'll be good for you. Understand that observation and fields of fire are not equated either. Okay, sometimes they are, but not always. Observation, if I can see it, yes, should be able to shoot it with my weapon. But read right here when it says So you can see 25K, but if all you're armed with is your rifle, then your fields of fire will probably be limited to something like 500 meters. Okay, so always brief observation and fields of fire in weapons ranges. Okay. Second Okoka factor is cover and concealment. So cover is protection from the effects of weapons fires, direct, indirect, or air to ground. Depending on what level of cover you have. If they're bringing in artillery, then are you covered against it by hiding behind a tree? Well, no, not really, because they can still drop it on your head, right? If you get into a bunker, you're much more protected. So remember that cover can be used to protect a force from effects of direct and indirect fires. So just make sure your level of cover matches the level of fires you're taking. It can protect or keep people from seeing you, right? If I hide behind a concrete wall, it also conceals my movement. Okay, so a piece of concrete wall can be both cover and concealment, but they're still not to be confused. So concealment is basically protection from observation, either from air or from ground. So you're mainly, if you go to, say, Washington for phase 3, you're going to be concealed from observation because it is very, very thick trees. So air to ground is not so much of an issue for you. There are some open areas you want to stay out of. But now you're thinking, like, can that 3-man team with AKs on the other end, can they see me? Okay, so I want to make sure I'm using that concealment. Cover stops bullets, concealment stops vision. That's the best way to think about it. And a piece, something can do both. The third factor deals with obstacles. And here comes Liam. The third Okoka factor deals with obstacles, and obstacles any natural or man-made terrain feature that stops, impedes, slows, or diverts movement. Okay, this could be simply a wall that was built. It could be a minefield. It can be whatever. Okay, if it natural or man-made, if it stops you, slows you down, any of those things, then it would be considered an obstacle. And we didn't know where those are. How can we use them to our advantage, and how do they slow us down, or how they're going to make us change our plan? Okay. Here it talks about a terrain feature being an obstacle. Okay, that terrain feature will make it. A river can be an obstacle for a tracked vehicle, right? Because you can't get across it, whether it's too deep or the banks are too steep, whatever. We're not really worried about that. On foot, you can almost do anything. If it's a sheer cliff and you just can't climb it, that's one thing, or you can't jump off of it. You're probably not going to see that at your phase 3. The fourth factor contains the key terrain. So key terrain is any terrain feature, natural or man-made, which, if controlled, will give a marked advantage to whoever controls it. Be prepared to justify why it is key. It is echelon of command, mission, enemy, and situation dependent. Okay. Also understand that decisive terrain can be controlled through fires or through observation. You don't actually have to be sitting on the hilltop to own it, or whatever it is. Okay, you should make sure the enemy doesn't have it. So if you can continue blasting the enemy out of that area, then we're not so worried about it. We still control it. It doesn't gain enough advantage to be there, because then they could hit us with fires, right? But as long as we keep them from gaining the advantage, that's good. The last one, avenues of approach. Like we talked about, this is land and air. So determine an avenue of approach must determine where the force wants to get to. And then based upon all previous terrain analysis, you determine how the terrain will allow maneuver to these objectives. So I'm not worried about all the avenues of approach across the entire place. I just am worried about things that come to me. So when you're in the defense, the avenue of approach show how the threat will probably maneuver into the friendly force's defense sector. Identify the threat avenues of approach for a force one size larger than your own. So if you're in there's a squad, how does a platoon get to you, right? If it goes above that, someone else should be taking care of it. And you still want to know if a squad can get there as well. Okay, so we've talked about Okoka enough. Now let's talk a little bit about some remaining stuff. So that's terrain and how we classify them. Okay. So this is talking about some topographic stuff and terrain stuff. Okay. The biggest thing is you want to understand what is unrestricted, restricted, severely restricted. Okay. So unrestricted is maneuvers unrestricted. This is a flat piece of land, no problem. It says 0 to 30% slope. Restricted. All right, so restricted maneuver is restricted. That's a 30 to 45% slope. Severely restricted maneuver restricted to where terrain will probably not be used for mounted operations. That's greater than 45% slope. The next step of function 2 is weather analysis. So that's to get into how we were going to analyze the weather. Hi, Liam. So, it has to be done continuously the entire time you're on mission. However, at the beginning, you're just briefing at one time. Okay. Moving on, so climate and weather are analyzed to determine the effects on operations. 5 military aspects that concern intelligence, support, operation planning are temperature and humidity, precipitation, winds, clouds, and visibility. Poor visibility is beneficial to offensive and retrograde operations. Okay, so if it is poor visibility, that can help you, right? Because the enemy can't see you. Restricted visibility hinders defensive operations because reconnaissance and surveillance are impeded, and target acquisition is less accurate and is restricted to shorter ranges. So the light data table is something you'll need all the way through. You've probably used it during OCS. I'm sure that your commander has had you do Cubs and ask you about training situation, right? So what is it like when we're training our OCS class? Beginning morning nautical twilight, so the sun is below the horizon and rising. Traditional time for military operations, first light from the sun. Sunrise, the sun is at the horizon. Sunset, sun is at the horizon going the other way. And then end evening, civil twilight. Sun is below the horizon and failing, so the last light from the sun. So at what point is it gone completely dark? We also have moonrise and moonset. These are important, obviously, because now we're thinking visibility. Do I have moonlight to work by? Or is the moon going to rise at 0400 and the sun's about to come up too, right? And then percentage of illumination, it's percent of the moon. So half full, quarter moon would be 50, 25, and 100% illumination, okay? All right, so wind speed and direction play an important role in your tactical scheme. The biggest places this is going to affect you is which way is it going to blow your smoke, right? If we have to use a smoke grenade to get into an envelopment or whatever, which way am I going to throw that grenade to let the smoke move over me? But also, it could, if it's a really windy day, you could throw into your brief that, air operations could be hindered. Maybe you can't get a LZ set up or get a medevac in. Precipitation affects the state of the ground, visibility, personnel effectiveness, and the functioning of some equipment. Okay, look at a heavy rain may make some unsurfaced roads and off-road areas impassable. So not necessarily to you because you're in boots, right? And you're not worried about a tank getting through there. You could look at the inches per hour. You're probably not getting rain where you are. Snowfall, if you're getting snowfall in July or June, that's not good. If you're in a winter accelerated, something like that, and you're in phase 3 in the wintertime, you may have to look more into this rain and snow and be able to tie that into your mission. Cloud cover, so type and amount, okay? You want to know where the base of the clouds are and the tops because that could also work with your air support, okay? You could hinder air support. Temperature and humidity affect the operations of equipment and efficiency of personnel. So extreme temperatures, both high and low, can cause numerous problems, such as a constant need for heated shelters, necessity for special clothing, equipment, and combat skills. Biggest thing here is if you're somewhere where it's cold, understand that your people are going to go from sitting still, okay, throwing on layers because they're cold. Now they're up moving, and sometimes that could be at a high rate of speed, especially when the action kicks off, right? So you need to be able to understand and help your candidates, your squad, understand that as I LD, I maybe don't need all those layers on, right? Understanding what does a waterproof layer do on the inside. So on the outside, sure, it keeps the water off of me. But inside, I've got all that sweat and that heat trying to get out, and now it's like radiating back into me. Well, if it's cold and wet, that's fine. I want that heat. But if it's already hot and wet, now I'm creating a very, very bad situation for my soldiers just to try to keep them dry. So just something to think about, okay? Looking at temperature and humidity. How's that going to play effect? Make sure you're drinking a lot of water. We're not worried about thermals. The rest of this goes into evaluating the threat. You can come on here and read. I do want to talk about composition. Okay, so composition is the identification and organization of units. It applies in specific units or commands opposed to types of units. It's often called the key to OB. So OB is this just identification, strength, command structure, disposition of personnel, units, and equipment, blah, blah, blah. So composition, what we're really looking for is, we've already talked about what numbers, right? What weapons are they using? But also think about what tactics would they likely use? What's their combat effectiveness? Have they been out there a long time? Have they, whatever. So kind of your disposition ties back into composition. What level of training do they have? Are they a special forces unit and you're trying to attack them with your squad of candidates? Think about what they are made up of as in numbers, but also their skill, okay? Disposition consists of the location of the threat of units in a manner in which these units are tactically deployed. In addition, disposition includes the recent, current, and proposed movement of the threat of units. Location is geographical area or position occupied by a unit. Tactical deployment is the relative form of units with respect to one another or in the terrain. Tactical formations are designed for executing certain maneuvers. If this deployment can be predetermined, it may lead to accurate appraisal of probable threat courses of action. So one of the big things we took out is combat effectiveness. Okay, so you need to be able to understand combat effectiveness. So personnel strength, amount and condition of weapons and equipment, status of training, past performance, personality traits, geographical area in which they currently are committed. So are they committed to more places than yours? Morale, health, discipline, and political reliability. So all of these things can go into that composition based on the combat effectiveness, right? All right, so I hope that this was at least a little bit helpful for you guys that are just needing a walkthrough of the FLER. I want to apologize again, this kind of chopped up, but I'm a dad also. So if you have any questions about any of these specifically, the number one answer for right now is going to be ask your grader when you get there. Ask what your cadre are doing. Have they been to a phase 3 and actually graded? So see what they have in store for whoever ends up in their squad. I will absolutely answer more questions if you put them in the comments or whatever. I'm fine with that. You can email me if you need to and get questions that way. Yeah. Dadding. Hi, buddy. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you have any more requests, feel free to reach out and let me know. Yeah, I hope you do great at phase 3. I know a bunch of you are going here pretty soon. Because it is now the 29th of April, so we've just got a couple months, right? May, June, July, so I guess you got about 3 months until a bunch of you ship out. If you're going to accelerated, good luck there as well. Thank you guys for watching the videos. Around, nowhere to go. You're talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. Talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. And then my recruiter came to me. Say what you want to be. Say what